Okay, so let's go ahead and start. So, talking a little bit about the debate here, I'll go ahead and share an image I made using uh, some Chat GPT software. So, starting off, so the first question was really, was the economy better off under the Kamala Harris campaign and Biden compared to Trump? So, um, this this question was really kind of stumping Kamala. She didn't really have any great answers for that. She kind of dodged it and talked more about what she will do, not what she did do, and whether or not it actually improved. So she kind of tried to steer away from that at the beginning, but um, she didn't really answer the question. So it's one thing I've kind of noticed during I think her CNN or whatever interview she had, I believe with Dana Bash, and can't really answer these first questions very good. So I think it takes her a while to get into her rhythm on that. So a few other kind of things that I noticed. Um, one of the things that Trump did mention with kind of these bounce back jobs. So I think if you look at the data, I think a lot of these bounce back jobs kind of regained. I think the data showed in around 2022 is when essentially all the jobs lost from COVID were back. So I think that kind of it's a good attack from Trump, but I think it really doesn't hit well with kind of the facts. But that's fine. It's a good line. Trump was or Kamala was aggressive on kind of how the economy did. How they had to kind of pick up the mess and kind of do all these different kinds of things and kind of the state that they left. Um, so um, with kind of COVID and everything like that, there was some really interesting points that I think Kamala brought up. So two of which, one of them I've got on the screen here, and I'll get to that in a second. But the other one is Kamala really brought up kind of how kind of this there was this huge argument at the beginning of COVID, whether it's a lab leak, whether this wasn't. John Stewart came out, and kind of changed the whole narrative on that. But what is really interesting how um, she brought up that issue and kind of alluding that um, Trump kind of withheld a lot of the attacking that he typically has on China and really kind of seemed to be more willing to work with them on things like that. And so I think Kamala hit him pretty hard on that and just kind of being like, hey, you were praising them and, doing all that kind of stuff early on. Even though as it's shown, they kind of were hiding stuff from. So I think that was a good issue that she hit him on. I know that that's kind of more of like a kind of like an RFK Trump view. I know people like Joe Rogan and others have talked about that. So that it's interesting that she brought that up. Not really one that I think she would brought up, but I think it was a good issue to kind of bring up. A few other things. Um, uh, so I personally think Trump is right on one part of his abortion policy. I think from a constitutional standpoint, the sending the vote back down to the states was probably from a federal standpoint that was a good approach. I think that as this typically happens, is that if you don't have a plan for what happens next from a federal level, you really kind of hurt. So I think really kind of how I think Democrats or how I would play this issue. And so that's kind of where the conservative progressive thing is, I think that sending it down to the states so that more local autonomy can happen. I think that's great. I think you're going to have groups in Alabama, Wyoming, wherever that are going to have a completely different abortion policy than some Democratic states. However, I think one thing that they should have done is they should have put in a federal minimum standard of what that would look like. And I think you're starting to see that kind of unravel a lot with places like Kansas, what will soon be Florida, and happened with what happened with Ohio. A lot of these votes kind of in these Republican states kind of flipped it back. So I think it would have been good. I think Lindsey Graham kind of threw this out early on as, hey, let's have a 12-week, let's have a 15-week minimum, and then including all the exceptions. And then I think if the Democratic states wanted more, they can do more, but like that's the minimum we're going to allow. I think that's probably the right way to go about it. So I think he was right on that. I think he was right, like, hey, we need to send that back down to the States. But, like with a lot of things, it really failed. Additionally, um, I think the morality issue that she really threw at Trump, like, hey, these people did not want that. Um, I think is definitely a really palatable argument. And I think she really hit hard on that. Democrats really love that in the Watch Party. I think that really hit Trump pretty hard. He didn't really have a really great rebuttal or anything like that on that. Some of the things that kind of happened throughout the debate, Trump didn't seem camera ready, as I kind of put. He looked annoyed. He looked tired. He looked like he didn't want to be there. And I think that kind of comes off. I think if you look at previous debate um, uh, occurrences, like with the George W. Bush or George Bush one, he was looking at his watch. A lot of these other kind of things. It didn't really come off as like he wanted to be there, especially at the very beginning. I think later on he kind of started kind of going back into more his 2016 aggressive attacking. Looked more aggressive towards his opponent. I think that look came off better from a camera standpoint, but didn't really look good at the very beginning. And I think there was data that most people only watch the first 30 minutes, so they don't really get to see that ending part. And I think Trump kind of realized that at the very end, he kind of lost the debate, as even though he's saying he didn't. Um, so I think that really kind of didn't put him in a good light at that end. Well, whether it'll swing votes or whatever, who knows. Um, yeah, so some other things that I thought were interesting, the Republican endorsement that Kamala got from um, Dick Cheney and others. I think that's interesting. Um, I don't really think that occurred or really is that important. No Democrats or probably any Republicans at this point anymore are going to switch their vote. I think it's just more of, I think what it says a lot about it. I think you see this with some of the GOP, especially in the Senate and definitely in the House, especially on things like Ukraine. That mindset is still there. Like, we've got to be aggressive in foreign policy. We got to attack Trump. We've got to, or not Trump, but we got to attack, U.S. adversaries. So I think that's really interesting, and really kind of shows, I guess, more of this aggressive standpoint. I think these old Republicans are really leaning in towards Kamala on that, and I think Biden kind of got that a little bit too, and was able to kind of keep that united. So whether or not that's good or bad, we'll have to see. But I thought it was interesting, just kind of that they're throwing their weight in there. Um, so I think Kamala did have some good one-liners and stuff like that about Trump getting prosecuted, and all these other kind of things, and how he's a convicted felon and all that kind of stuff. I think that was good during the debate. That kind of goes into what Democrats were playing up, is she's this prosecutor and is prosecuting this criminal. So whether or not that is whether that's important or not, who knows. But as far as messaging goes, it's really good. Additionally, I think that Democrats really like that, and I think they really kind of set that up well, especially with they really hit him with all these lawsuits, and now you're throwing Kamala, who's this prosecutor, and they drained him of money and all this other kind of stuff during these court cases. So I think it really did good in the sense that it's kind of on message from the very beginning, which kind of makes me think that this was planned at the very beginning. Um, so some other things that I thought were interesting. So when she did talk about fracking, I thought that was interesting because Dems in the room didn't really talk much about that, or didn't really share much about that. So when she was talking about how, oh, we, now support fracking and it's a good thing and it's a job creator, and how she kind of reversed her stance on that, Dems really didn't hear much from them in Georgia. So I thought that was interesting. How kind of all that happened. There wasn't much applause or anything like that. Um, and I thought that was good. But now where Trump kind of came back and hit her on that is when she, as probably a good one liner that he kind of hit her on that I thought was very funny was Yeah, I think it was good. And he was playing up way too much at the end, after the debate. But little dig of, oh, I'm speaking, and he tried to kind of hit her back on that, and I think it was low. I don't think, I think that doesn't suit Trump very well in terms of like a middle of the road voter. They probably don't know anything about it, but it was a little kind of inside baseball kind of a thing that I thought was funny, and Dems didn't say much about that. Um, Dems we're really amped about the January 6th stuff that Kamala was talking about. Um, she they really like that. I think that, and maybe this is the whole reason why it's there, is to kind of play it up. I don't really think it was that big a deal. I think it was a bad look. I don't think it was, I believe in the institutions more than I think maybe most people do. So I don't know if it was really that resonating with me, but I know many Dems in the room were very amped up when she started about January 6th and others. Um, so one thing I noticed with Trump is he was coming back on immigration a lot. Now I've got some data that I've got here on my phone, really talking about kind of some of the issues for the 2024 general election. So if you look at them, this is from Pew, you can look it up. So the economy was number one amongst all voters, healthcare, Supreme Court appointments, which that kind of plays into her attacks on him um, with Roe v. Wade, foreign policy, violent crime, immigration, and then gun policy and abortion. All of was it 6 or 7 are very important to their vote, and are registered voters, and had 50% over that. Racial and ethnic inequality and climate change was much lower, but amongst all voters, those issues were big. So I think Trump coming back to immigration is, I think it's good because it is one of the top. I think it's sixth and the most important issue of all voters. Um, so I think it was good that he kept coming back to that. But I think he kept doing it too much, and he kind of was flailing a little bit with the eating the dogs and all those kind of memes that are created since then. I don't think he really hit her hard enough on the economy. I think he should have kept pressing and coming back to that first question that was asked of her. Um, and I think you can kind of get into the moderators and whether or not they did a good job of, keeping her to account as much as they kept him to account. So I think that was where it kind of came on Trump, and I think Trump should have kept coming back and hitting her hard on the economy and like, hey, like we're not as good as we were. And I think she's got some. I think there are some good rebuttals to that, but I think at the end of the day, most voters aren't going to care. I think they're going to be like, hey, I'm not better off than where I was. So I think he should have done better than that. So I think he was good on the economy, violent crime, immigration, and those kind of things. But I think foreign policy, he did not hit her hard enough on. I think his typical, I'll have this solved in one day or whatever before I even get elected, I think is what he said. I think I understand that's kind of a hard one to talk about, but that's something that I think he needs to hit her harder on that. I think that's a really palatable issue. Um, so him rejecting the 2020 election, that was just funny. I think there was a little sarcasm in there. I think David Muir, I don't know if he really picked up on that, but maybe it's because he's looking at it from his job, so he's maybe a little bit more serious about it than the casual voter. But Trump a little bit, I think he was joking a little bit on that. Um, I will say I think he was caught and like he was like, hell yeah, I lost by a hair of a whisker. So it's a little bit better, I think, from where he was. But when he kind of came back and said, "Oh no, that was wrong," I didn't say that and stuff like that. I don't think that was really good from a middle of the road voter. So yeah, so once again, Kamala's not as strong on foreign policy. She did good job of hitting back on Trump and for Afghanistan. I think some of that kind of stuff, isn't really talked a lot about. The Afghanistan government was not brought in on that. It was kind of a lot like with what happened in Vietnam. I think they didn't bring in the core people. It's mostly this treaty between the United States and uh, Vietnam, North Vietnam in that sense, and here in the Taliban and that's in Afghanistan. Um, so I think that it's good and like, hey, here's kind of the backstory of it all. And I think Biden was like, hey, like we got to get the hell out of here, and I think he realized there's no point in staying. Yeah, they talk about the pivot to Europe, and I think that's just it probably in hindsight, it's going to probably look good that they got out. I think all the, they lost all the equipment and everything like that. Trump should have hit them harder on that. Especially since it's like now we could have taken that and given it to um, Ukraine or whoever. Um, so yeah, so I think she did good at kind of talking about some of the stuff that isn't necessarily talked about on that end. But I think it really kind of shows is that when America has these agreements and we have a moment of weakness or we play our hand too much, or in this case, when Biden came in, it really looks like it definitely allows our enemies to take advantage of what's going on. She dodged the question about responsibility. How responsible are they? I think they were 100% responsible. There's no one. At the end of the day, what was it? Truman said the buck stops with me. So I think that Kamala and Biden should have been taking more responsibility on that. I don't think they really did, and I think they do. They look at like, oh, we are accepting weakness or whatever it is, and I think in hindsight, it'll probably come back, and as long as Taliban and Al Qaeda and them don't do anything super crazy, I think it'll probably come back and be like maybe it's a smart move, especially if we can get a good settlement of Ukraine. Trump should have shifted attack on her being weak. I mean, I think on a lot of these issues, especially with her not hitting Ticketmaster or any of these other kind of price gouging groups, you should have hit her hard on that and be like, hey, you didn't do it, but I would, and and that's what you're going to get as a president. So I think that was interesting. The last one was that I've got here on the screen. Once again, AI made this, so YouTube will probably get pissy about it. But Kamala, she's a gun owner, so I thought that was very interesting. I think I saw some research go back and say that she, it's for personal protection or whatever it was. But I think it's one of those where it's like, well, you live in San Francisco, and San Francisco's kind of a shithole, so I'm not surprised you're a gun owner. But and everyone knows about Tim Walz being a gun owner. But I think that's something they don't talk a lot about. And I think it kind of conflicts with their messaging, but I think there's a way to really kind of pair that with hopefully some of these common sense policies. One of the ones that I don't like that they talk a lot about is these assault weapons bans. I think it's just stupid. I don't think it's going to do anything. Especially when you look at school shootings and stuff like that. Yeah, like the one in Georgia, assault weapons. So I think there's a little bit of nuance that needs to be in there, but I think that one can definitely be hit. But when you start talking about the gun show loopholes and stuff like that, I think Kamala saying she's a gun owner and all these other kind of things are talking about why it's not a good issue. I think is there. Something she could definitely kind of try to tie into some of her messages. I don't know if it'll sway anybody, but I think it's a better message. Trump on Obamacare, it's weak. We've got a plan. I think he was saying, uh, what was he saying? He was like, we're gonna look at what's bad and we're gonna strip what's bad and we'll keep what's good. And it shows he didn't have a plan. And I think there was actually a article that came out after the election or after the debate and was showing that Republicans are like, I think it was the one in Ohio who did the immigration bill, and he was even saying, he was like, hey, look, it's been around for 10 years. We're not really going to be able to strip anything about it. So I think the manufacturing jobs coming in and going away and things like that, that's definitely something that isn't really talked a lot about, but I think it could be. Yeah, so if you keep going, she seems like this, like when she's like aggressive, she seems like this like mama bear, like person who's trying to be all, defending her kids and stuff like that. And some people like that and some people don't. I think it's just cringy from me. So I think I think she was good in being composed, but I think when she gets like a little too aggressive on stuff, it could come off as that. Um, the normal energy plans, I thought Trump was hilarious when he was talking about that. It's like, oh, the normal energy plans. It's like, well, what is normal energy? I think what he's trying to say is the fossil fuels and non-renewables as normal energy. And I think it just shows, he didn't. There's really not a good argument for the energy debate and going into renewables. I think the transition is really what needs to be discussed. But yeah, I think it's interesting with the energy because he could have tied that into, hey, or Kamala could have tied that into, hey, we're going to these renewables, so we don't have to be as involved in Afghanistan. We don't have to be as involved in Syria and all these other places because economically, those two countries are, but a bunch of other ones in the region are very dependent on oil and oil revenues and things like that. And we can really kind of distance ourselves from those areas of the country and have a little bit more impact on them. The handshake discussion, I missed the very beginning of the debate when that was discussed until I saw some commentary after. I thought that discussion was so fucking stupid. How people were talking about how great and tough she looks by going over there and shaking his hand. I thought the funniest thing was, she looks tiny compared to him. He's like 6'3" and she's like 5'4", 5'6" or something like that. So he kind of towers over her. And I think for her is one of those where, she wanted to kind of get under his skin, which I think showed, throughout the entire debate, she wanted to get under his skin, going up to him, apparently Biden didn't handshake Trump, but the fact that she did, I think is a good look, but I think it's the commentary discussion. I wouldn't talk any more about it, but I think people need something to talk about since there's not much policy coming from either one of them. At the very end, there's very little Biden. No one was really talking about Biden, and what he's doing and stuff like that. I mean, Trump kind of did, saying, he didn't probably know where he is, wake him up at 4 p.m., like come on down and stuff. But other than that, it really wasn't. He tried. I think Trump should have done more at tying her to Biden and saying, hey, like, yeah, you were with Biden on these issues, and really kind of having her talk about it. And I think, especially on things like Israel, she's not where Biden is on it. And I think if you do that, you can really kind of start dividing up her arguments and where she is with Biden and really kind of showing she's a split from him. And there's a lot of this turmoil within the party and stuff. So I think he could have done better on that. So the last thing, this was done on Saturday. The debate was on Tuesday, so wasn't able to get it out as quick. But I think it's interesting because I think she raised like $50 million after the debate. I think she's got over $100 million lead on Trump, which, like I said, kind of plays into what Democrats want to do at the very beginning. But I think it's interesting because it just kind of shows from a financial standpoint, where they're at. And Trump really needs to make up some money. And I haven't looked at what the down ballot races look like, but I think that's not going to be a good look for Republicans as well. And statistically, there's a lot of correlation to how much money you're raising and spending and stuff like that to if you're going to win or not, and the likelihood. So I think just based off of that, it looks like she's definitely ahead. So I think she came out really good, much better than I think I expected. I think the post debate stuff was just so stupid. So she already acknowledged, she's like, "Oh, I'm willing to debate again." I wouldn't. I wouldn't do it. I think you did really good. Throw a Waltz up there, let him go against Vance, hope for a tie on that. JD Vance is going to be better than Trump on probably some of this messaging stuff. But let them fight it out, and then you can kind of come back and say, hey, look, we debated them. We had 2 debates and we won each one. There's no more to be discussed. I think her coming out and wanting more debates isn't going to end up being very good for her. Trump saying he didn't want to debate, I don't believe that, but I think he should have said, yeah, I want to debate. Maybe say he didn't hit her hard enough on some of the stuff he wanted to hit her on and all these other kind of things. But I think he should definitely go back and try to debate her again. I think it was dumb for him to not do that. And he's now kind of posting weird shit on Instagram about cat ladies and all this other kind of stuff and loving animals and things like that. So yeah. So I think overall, I think she definitely won. I think there was definitely stuff Trump needed to do better on. I think for him to compete, I think if he comes back, he'll probably be here in that second debate. I'm almost confident about it, especially since Trump has this like boxer mentality that he's a fighter, and I think he looks at it and says, "Hey, he got beat, and he wants to go back and rematch and try to come back and get his title." So I think he could have done much better. And I think he will do better. I think he needs to gain some ground. I think really what I'm looking ahead to is this next week, whether interest rates should come down. I don't think it's going to make that much in the economy, but I think it's going to be really good messaging for Kamala. And I think what Trump kind of needs is I think he really needs to see what's going to happen in Israel and Palestine, and kind of see what if Biden takes a hit on the agreements and the discussion over there. I think that it could play good into his hand, especially if Trump kind of plays the right cards on that. But I think it's just kind of getting harder now that Biden's kind of out of the picture. So you can't. It's getting harder and harder to tie Biden to Kamala. So yeah. So I think that's kind of where I'm going to leave this. Obviously, there's going to be some more stuff, and I've got a few more things I want to kind of discuss on the next week. One of them, which was that down ballot money, and the other one was why I think Trump did well in that first term, and things that Democrats probably won't say a lot. So, so yeah, so that's where I'm going to leave it. And yeah, so I look forward to seeing everyone next time, and I hope everyone has a good weekend.